Last year, Russia made the questionable decision to use a missile to destroy its Cosmos 1408 satellite, which weighed over 4,800 pounds. According to several space debris experts, the explosion formed a whole new debris ring around the Earth, which is bound to cause a series of problems. Today, we'll be looking at NASA's immediate action to avoid any serious problems that could have been caused by a collision. First off, moving the space station around. Right now, there are 7 people present at the ISS. 3 of these are US astronauts, while the 3 others are Russian and 1 of them is Japanese. A threat to their life was avoided by maneuvering the space station around, hoping to avoid any kind of impact from destructive space debris. For over 5 minutes, the space station used thrusters from Russia's spacecraft Progress 81, which are connected to the station. This was done to move the ISS. At the Johnson Space Center, flight controllers monitor and supervise the activities going on around NASA's space station. Russia's Mission Control Center is located in Korolev, which is located outside of Moscow and from where Russia operates it. The US Space Agency gave a statement clarifying the events, stating that the thruster firing was 8:25 p.m. EDT and that the maneuvering did not end up affecting the station operations. The urgency of the maneuvering was also mentioned in the statement, as they clarified that the fragment of space debris could have passed by super close if the ISS hadn't moved out of the way. A piece of junk passing by that close to the ISS could cause unpredictable harm to the missions that NASA puts a lot of work into planning, not to mention the loss of equipment and breakage that could have been caused if efforts hadn't been made to avoid an encounter. This truly was a close call for NASA. Up next, space junk may pose a threat to humanity. Hugh Lewis, who was a renowned professor in the field, gave us all a heads up about the consequences of Russia's recent explosive experiment. According to him, we might face the consequences of this event for many decades. The result of exploding an object as heavy as the Cosmos 1408 satellite wasn't just going to disappear. When a mass explodes in space, its debris floats can float out of control. Lewis emphasized how the outcome of this procedure would never be good. He also added that it was unclear to him why something good out of this was ever even expected. When it comes to humans and traveling through space, it's already a highly risky business. To create more trouble for spaceflight just seems inconsiderate on their part. Lewis pointed out how a worse target couldn't have been picked for the explosion because the debris is now getting in the way of important space operations and posing a threat to the existence of humanity itself if this junk was ever to collide with the Earth. Nelson, NASA's leader, found himself outraged at this action. To him, it was disappointing to see Russia's lack of responsibility in terms of going through with an operation that destabilized. Regardless, he is now trying to handle this brand new space junk problem to bring a viable solution to the table. Moving on, a whole space station could have been destroyed. A significant amount of junk is already flying past the Earth. According to NASA, around 23,000 bits of debris orbiting the Earth are bigger than a softball. They tend to travel at speeds of almost 17,500 miles per hour, which is fast enough for a fairly small piece of space junk to destroy a satellite or a spacecraft. Much of this junk is being tracked by the Department of Defense's Global Space Surveillance Network, though many additional smaller fragments in orbit can't be detected readily. The main issue is that space junk breeds more space junk by increasing the likelihood of accidents. For example, in 2009, the decommissioned Russian spacecraft Cosmos 2251 collided with an Iridium satellite, resulting in 2,000 4-inch pieces of debris, as well as countless microscopic particles. Back in 2013, an astronaut discovered a concerning bullet hole-shaped defect in the solar panel of a space station. This could have been caused by space debris or a small meteorite. Humanity has already thrown a lot of debris into space, and the consequences are significant and and growing. In space, spent rockets, satellites, and other junk have collected, increasing the likelihood of them colliding with other debris and further dividing. It's important to realize that this debris will not be going anywhere, but it will keep coming back and causing problems for space operations in the future. Coming up, what will happen if we don't get rid of the debris problem? Experts have already warned us about the long-term consequences of the accumulation of this space junk. If enough debris accumulates over the next 3 or 4 decades, a chaotic cascade of crashes will occur. This phenomenon is called the Kessler syndrome. Back in 2018, there were numerous concerns about SpaceX's intentions to send thousands of satellites into orbit. The space company has already launched over 1,800 satellites, with ambitions to launch thousands more. Despite SpaceX's plans to take failing or obsolete satellites out of orbit, the vast number of satellites implies a lot of objects whizzing around the planet. Amazon aims to deploy over 3,200 satellites, in addition to other mega satellite constellations as well. All of this means bad news, considering how the orbit will become more and more cluttered as we increase the number of satellites out there. An ideal situation to prevent catastrophic collisions in space is to reduce the number of objects flying around in space, which is the direction that NASA wants space companies to take for the future. Now, moving on to the ISS getting replaced by commercial space stations. The International Space Station partners are considering the possibility of using commercial space stations currently being developed by American firms. They plan on paying to use said commercial space stations to replace the ISS, but there may be a catch. First off, why replace the ISS? The ISS partners are considering how to shift the work they do on the ISS to commercial space stations, which will be in low Earth orbits. NASA has helped create this technology to replace the ISS in the next 10 years, which seems like a tremendous step on the organization's part. With the privatization of the low Earth orbit, or the LEO, the partners believe they need to reassess their core principles. According to Peter Graf, who heads science and application at the German Space Agency, the strategies need to be shifted around to make room for private space stations to fit into the scene. Germany has had the greatest contribution to the ESA share of the ISS. It also actively uses it for basic and practical research, which means that their opinions mean a great deal at the end of the day. Moving on, there are quite a few obstacles for ISS partners. Currently, there are barter arrangements in place amongst the partners that help fund the ISS. It's a two-way process where ISS gets to flourish thanks to the funds from the partners, and the partners get to carry out research and space missions with the highly equipped ISS. However, there may not be just the singular ISS in the future. This puts them in a tight spot where they now have to consider all the possibilities surrounding payments and cooperation. All the partners know that they may be required to settle into a new procedure, but they're also willing to accept the change. There is a simple way for them to approach payments, which would involve space agencies directly paying the commercial space station companies. However, there could be political challenges to this, considering how many of the partners are not from America. Including taxes will repel non-US partners from being an active part of this arrangement. In places like Europe, where taxes could be a big issue, they could consider developing a European space station. The ESA members are already having ongoing discussions over developing spaceflight capabilities in Europe. This autonomy could potentially save them a lot of money in the long term, even though it may require an enormous chunk of investment. Finally, international companies are joining the movement. This is another smart solution to get involved in the initiatives for commercial space centers. As a non-US company, Thales Alenia will be producing units for Axiom Space and constructing components for Northrop Grumman's Cygnus spacecraft, which will be used in its commercial space station in the end. Japanese corporations are also interested in commercial space station projects. According to Masami Onoda, director of the Japanese Space Agency, they are wholeheartedly looking forward to collaborating with commercial outposts. In the end, however, the more pressing matter revolves around partners finalizing their plans. If they are to extend the operations till 2030, there needs to be extensive planning done about future arrangements. In the following months, the partners are hoping to plan their way forward with the ISS. In the end, Graf emphasized the urgent demand for capabilities in LEO, as a human outpost will be present there. Regardless of what the future holds, the new LEO space stations will enable a lot of newer possibilities that all the space station partners are looking forward to. And that's a wrap, folks. What do you guys feel about the future of the ISS? Tell us in the comments below. And as always, make sure to click that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more space-related news. See you in the next video.